in the sky. I can go twice the time. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can get away. Rest to know, ways to grow, a reading rainbow.
Last time?
Yeah, like the last half hour that we've been recording.
That's why I wanted to do like maybe a 5-minute thing.
Yeah, it's a joke. We're fine. I'm D-Day.
And I'm not.
And this is something else.
I'm Xena with an X, and this is also something else. What a coincidence.
Yeah, it is a coincidence. It's a coincidence that, like, you just came over. And I had done a bunch of research
in front of us.
and was ready to record a podcast. It's great.
Were you ready? It didn't look like you were quite ready.
I was before I broke all that glass.
Yeah. It seems like the fluster is now gone.
Funny thing about breaking a glass and vacuuming up glass on a filthy floor in your garage. Like, where do you stop vacuuming then? Like, I've only started because there was glass, but now I notice all this cat litter and other assorted filth.
It's exactly like Ripley and Newt from Aliens. When Ripley
when you
feeds
find
her
a child
hot chocolate, and then she, like, spills a little on her face, and she, like, cleans up a little bit, and she's like, oh, now I made a clean spot, now I gotta do the whole thing.
Yeah, that doesn't work in real life. It turns out that, like, real life kids hate being washed.
My cat hates human touch, but it's fine.
Yeah, my son hates having his hair washed. And I'm just like, oh, buddy, your hair's sticky. We got to take a shower. He's just like, but not my hair, right? It's like, no. Your hair is why we're taking a shower. Yeah, no, it's greasy and gross. Come on.
So, Something Else is a podcast where we take a topic that is something that's not that thing.
And then we talk about something else.
Yeah. Today's topic is books and the weird ones that we know and love and want to share with people. Or if you already know the books, maybe share some of our weird insight.
And there's so many, like, good books that I want to share, but are, like, real mainstream or practically mainstream or were mainstream that I am specifically not mentioning.
Yeah. Again, I don't know our listener demo, but I do feel like a lot of them are going to know the Illuminatus trilogy, if not because they read it, because they've heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, like, I'm wondering, and for that matter, I mean, that is a book from a different era.
Yeah, but also oddly relevant with conspiratorial thinking on the rise all over the country.
It really is. And it has been so adopted in different ways by mainstream media.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Yeah, but
like,
never...
Once you learn about the 23 thing and that all the fucking scriptwriters in Hollywood have read this book and they just insert 23s into stuff just so you can go, aha.
Whenever I see a character whose initials are HC, I do not trust that character.
Okay. Tell me about that, because I looked at the excerpt that you posted. I didn't see anything about...
Oh, it doesn't say it in there. And I don't believe... Okay, so apparently we're going to start by talking about Illuminatus. The Illuminatus trilogy was written by Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson, and then Robert Shea died, and Robert Anton Wilson...
He died too.
Wrote another trilogy called the Schrodinger's Cat trilogy, which is not quite as good as Illuminatus, but is farther out there.
True.
It's like Illuminatus with schizophrenia.
It's a neat body of work. I really like Robert Anton Wilson, and it's sad that he died, like, kind of alone and destitute.
Mm-hmm.
When he did, like, there's this huge... It was before GoFundMe or Kickstarter or any of that.
Right.
There's just this... I was reading boingboing.net, and someone was like, hey, Robert Anton Wilson is kind of dying and doesn't have any money. And so it's just a shit ton of people all just donated a ton of money to get him like proper hospice care and like proper.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read everything that he wrote, including like his self-help books.
The Prometheus Rising.
Prometheus
shit?
Rising, and there were 2 other books in that series of how to change your mindset and look through different reality tunnels to understand how other people's opinions are formed and how valid they are, even if they're completely counter to yours, unless you're a fucking Nazi.
But I think he did actually go into like, dude, some of his projects to do that were weird. Like watching like Nazi speeches, but like with an open mind. There's
I don't do that, but I do read a lot of conservative media in addition to the real media that I read, in addition to the real sarcastic news that I read. And, like, it is so fucking unhinged and devoid of anything other than cynicism. And, like, it's so intellectually disingenuous. Yeah. If you have any idea what is going on or, like, what has gone on in the world over the past 30 years.
It's like if you don't take the idea of politics as a way to form solutions, that you think that all politicians are actually just people out for power. And then if you are like, well, fuck it, they can do it, I'll do it, and I'll lie, cheat, and steal because that's what they're doing without actually knowing. Like,
without any proof.
It's about actually doing things for the world.
Some people are lying, cheating, and stealing, and I don't want to minimize that. But,
absolutely correct.
But
some of them are not.
There is proof. And if you read enough good journalism, you can see the shadows of the proof.
Yeah. But we're talking about Illuminatus trilogy.
And we're coming for you, Devin Nunes. You fuck.
Fucking cow.
I follow his cow on Twitter. It's not a very good follow, but I do it anyway.
I haven't logged on to Twitter since I made the account. I don't even know if it's working because my girlfriend said she couldn't find it.
I couldn't find it, and I figured that what you had told me that was your actual handle was another level of a joke, and I figured that, like, I was just going to go down this rabbit hole every time. No. You're on Twitter. You're at --Zeno Twitter.
Yeah.
And I am a 3RD_DAY. And if you follow me, you can hear me swearing at the president.
There's got to be a better way to do this over an audible medium. Like maybe the equivalent of a QR code that your phone like can hear, like just a little.
The squelching noise of old modems.
Yeah, like squelch over a podcast.
Thing dong, thing dong, thing dong.
And then your phone will be like, "Oh, hey, they just sent this link. Do you want to go to it?"
Yeah.
All right.
Would you like to lower your volume?
This is Revolutionary New Media talking about books which no one reads anymore.
Right. Except for us, because we're olds. So we're talking about Illuminatus.
If that's cool, you can start with the other stuff.
I think we already started with Illuminatus. I figure we should continue going.
It was formative and life-changing to me in high school when me and my friend group like read it. Oh my god. Completely my life took a weird left turn internally, like in my mind.
It has to. Like even with all of the like postmodernist literature I had already read, I was not prepared to get a narrative about a protagonist who is not the actual protagonist and is not even that person. Like 70 pages, 110 pages into the book, they just pull the rug out from under you. It's just like, oh no. Like something else has been going on the entire time.
Yes.
And then you start seeing how many levels there are of conspiracy in this book that you're reading, through the fact that like they have just uncovered this conspiracy of the protagonist is not the protagonist.
Yeah. So, like a capsule, it's about all of the conspiracy theories that I think Robert Anton Wilson, he was an editor at Playboy, and he was the
Who wasn't?
Okay. So they would get these letters from readers, and they'd not post, whatever. They'd post some of the listener letters to Playboy, but he would get all these unhinged, like, ranting lunatics talking about all of these crazy conspiracy theories, and he would just keep them off to the side. And some of it was about an ancient island nation that's not Atlantis, but like it, called Mumu,
And that's based
Or
off of a different book from the 50s, I believe, about Mew, which I got for Rex for Christmas last year, and neither of us have read yet. But like, that is one of the published like transcripts of just crazy unhinged conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I saw several of those books when I was in high school at the used bookstore in Arcata. Tin Can Mailman, shout out. Not a sponsor yet. They might be soon. I saw those books, and I like leafed through a couple of them, and I was like, I am not reading
The
this
Lost
garbage.
Island of Mew, I believe it's called.
Oh,
they're not well written,
books, yeah.
But they are counterculture historical.
Yes, they feed in there. But also, you know, obviously the Illuminatus, the secret masters, that like Hitler's still alive and in an underground bunker. Just all of the conspiracy theories that unhinged people tried to convince him were real and get Playboy to publish, not post. And he just decided, like, okay, what if every single one of these was true? What world would that be? And let's make it.
And all at the same time, like, with the full knowledge of and the control of the Illuminatus, who either our protagonists are a part of the Illuminatus or are fighting against the Illuminatus.
It's never quite clear.
Or the Leviathan, or the American Medical Association. And a lot of this is happening in ostensibly the Nautilus submarine from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, captained by a man named Hagbard Celine, who you absolutely should not trust, because you should not trust anyone with the initials HC.
Got it.
Which is something that a couple characters, including Hagbard, do mention that to the primary protagonist on several occasions. And because of that, like, I don't trust any character that I see in any media with those initials, because I know how writing people like really love Illuminatus and how dense it is. And it's funny. Holy shit, is it funny.
Yeah, it's funny first and a little subversive at first glance, and it's a lot subversive once you read it some more.
And Schrodinger's Cat Trilogy is overtly subversive and has really, really good cacophonous style ideas for how to fuck with corporations and society. There's this great concept in Schrodinger's Cat Trilogy about putting up signs to dissuade just abhorrent behavior that nobody was doing in the first place. But, like, if you go to a fancy department store like Nordstrom's and there is a sign on the wall that says no spitting.
Now you're thinking of spitting.
Not only are you thinking of spitting, you're thinking of the situation where in this high-end department store there was so much spitting going on that you had to put up a sign.
And so was that the little person?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know. It's kind of...
I can't remember his name. I believe he was described as a dwarf.
Markov chain.
Yes.
Because it's a mathematical reference about Markov chains. Which is... I don't understand Markov chains at all. They're very weird. But he would always sign it the MGT, which looks like management, but management is MGMT.
Yep.
But since he was a person of short stature, it would be from the midget, I guess. We can say that now, because it's, it was a different time.
We can say that about a different... No, let's just not say it at all.
I will unsay it.
Fair. Let's see. Okay. So...
But yeah, like questioning authority and like culture jamming.
Yeah, a lot...
all came from this. I would say that thing that we're not supposed to mention on this podcast is a direct descendant of this book.
Yeah, I think Robert Anton Wilson very much inspired the Johns and the Suicide Club and the Cacophonous Society.
Well, and Discordians. I mean, that's in the book.
Discordian
and Cacophony are like real close, and also
Church of the Subgenius. Yep.
Yeah, I don't have any of their books. I would have used that as a topic if I had one.
Yeah. And also, I don't know how to describe those books, but if you don't know what we're talking about, like, I have no idea how you are listening to this podcast, honestly. All right. First line of the book that I was going to read out of the excerpt. There is a concept in Illuminatus that has been drawn into a lot of other pieces of media, and it is immanentizing the eschaton.
Eschaton?
I
only ever read it in my brain.
ESCHATON. I think it's eschaton,
yeah.
But I could be completely wrong. In any case, it is basically priming the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the fire and brimstone apocalypse, but the catastrophic, cataclysmic, transformational change of society.
Yeah, which I feel like maybe Republicans are doing right now. I think they're immanentizing the eschaton.
I think they're Zionists.
Yeah.
The
red calf in Jerusalem.
There is no goddamn reason for crazy Southern Christians to give two shits about what happens in Israel unless they're doing it because of make-believe based reasons. It is pretty obviously abhorrent what is happening in Israel, and I can say that because, like Bernie Sanders, I am a Jew.
And I am not.
An anti-Semitic, self-hating Jew.
I am 1/64th native Quebecois. That's my only non-white.
Does not count.
Nope. Not at all. Unless you buy into the idea that the Native American peoples are the 13th lost tribe. As espoused by Mormonism, then I might be 1/64th weird Jew. But I'm not.
You could be 1/64th weird Jew if you really need to, but not because of Mormonism. How about that? I am a gatekeeper of weird Judaism.
I just see a club and I want to be in it.
Fair.
I'm intellectual and fucking nerdy, and I want that Jew.
We'll go have a schwitz. We'll wear towels. We'll go get bagels. It'll be stereotypical. All right. Excerpt from Illuminatus?
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is the first paragraph of the first page of Illuminatus trilogy. It was the year when they finally immanentized the eschaton. On April 1st, the world's great powers came closer to nuclear war than ever before, all because of an obscure island named Fernando Poo. By the time international affairs returned to their normal Cold War level, some wits were calling it the most tasteless April Fool's joke in history. I happen to know all the details about what happened, but I have no idea how to recount them in a manner that will make sense to most readers. For instance, I am not even sure who I am, and my embarrassment on that matter makes me wonder if you will believe anything I reveal. Worse yet, I am at the moment very conscious of a squirrel in Central Park, just off 68th Street in New York City, that is leaping from one tree to another, and I think that happens on the night of April 23rd, or is it the morning of April 24th? But fitting the squirrel together with Fernando Poo is, for the present, beyond my powers. I beg your tolerance. There is nothing I can do to make things any easier for any of us, and you will have to accept being addressed by a disembodied voice, just as I accept the compulsion to speak out, even though I am painfully aware that I am talking to an invisible, perhaps non-existent audience. Wise men have regarded the earth as a tragedy, a farce, even an illusionist trick. But all, if they are truly wise and not merely intellectual rapists, recognize that it is certainly some kind of stage in which we all play roles, most of us being very poorly coached and totally unrehearsed before the curtain rises. Is it too much if I ask tentatively that we agree to look upon it as a circus, a touring carnival wandering about the sun for a record session of 4 billion years and producing new monsters and miracles, hoaxes and bloody mishaps, wonders and blunders, but never quite entertaining the customers well enough to prevent them from leaving, one by one, and returning to their homes for a long and bored winter's sleep under the dust. Then, say, for a while at least, that I have found an identity as ringmaster, but that crown sits uneasily on my head, if I have a head, and I must warn you that the troupe is small for a universe this size, and many of us have to double or triple our stints, so you can expect me back in many other guises. Indeed, do many things come to pass.
Nice.
Who is our narrator?
The unreliable narrator is something that I think gets used a lot nowadays, and I think that, they probably didn't...
I think every single book that we chose has an unreliable narrator in it.
Big time. So
and I'm going to talk about that.
Themes with all of these books that I'd like to maybe like wrap a ribbon around at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel it with the. I'm just saying this, and I don't know who the audience is, and there might not be one.
And
hey, listeners, glad you're listening.
They knew there would be a little bit of an audience, because Malacalypse the Elder had already released the Book of Discordianism, I believe, the Sacred Cow.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure about the timing of that.
I believe that's first. I believe the Sacred Cow was released in the late 60s, like 68, 69 maybe, and Illuminatus came out in 75. But I'm talking out my ass, and I don't know. Like, I printed that out at one point. I had it in a folio in my bookcase.
Me too. I absolutely, like, on early 90s BBSs, that shit was T-files.
Yeah.
You just download, like, the Principia Discordia.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah, and, like, hand that around to people.
And
so
we used to print it out and put it not in between newspapers, in newspaper racks, but, like, we would just... like under the stack, we would start filtering them in between the individual issues.
Nice. Yeah, so this is weird like culture jamming stuff. Like Robert Anton Wilson obviously knew about this sort of thing, and those people were, if not friends, he knew about them. And then there's, I think Discordianism really kind of came out of Texas. I could be wrong about it, but
it wouldn't surprise me.
I know some high priests down there. And it's a particular sort of Texan anarchy that they're espousing through religious language that I love. Yeah,
it does. In the way that, like, it makes so much sense in the world that the Church of the Subgenius came out of the Bay Area. Like that, it's those fucking goofballs.
So, have you? Any more things you want to touch on this? Because I'm going to ask you a question.
I think Illuminatus is a big enough thing so that if somebody isn't sold yet after us spending 8 or 10 minutes talking about it, we don't have to lecture anymore on it.
That a lot of people have heard they should read and maybe didn't, and we're just saying no, your friends are right. Read it. It's fucking weird. And once you read it, you'll see so many references to it in mainstream media. In everything.
Anything even a little bit subversive.
Kind of part of the point of conspiratorial thinking is that you'll see connections, but this book is made to make weird connections.
It's made of bullshit connections.
It's made to fuck with your mind, which is beautiful.
Kabbalah wouldn't be the thing that it is today if Illuminatus had not culture jammed that into this incredibly weird book. Like, it's so pervasive in our culture, and like most of the rubes don't even realize it.
So, are you familiar with the band?
Also, wait a second. This is an incredibly dense book. It's not the easiest book to read. Like,
I think
it's definitely
the books we're talking about. It might be one of the easier ones.
Yes. Like, this is an experimental novel. It's not a wildly experimental novel like some of the stuff we're going to mention.
A trained author, like
but they're
he's
like
not like a writer that like wanted to be a writer with his life. He was an editor at Playboy, and then was like, I think I can do this. So like, it is clumsy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he's not they're not Douglas Adams. It's not that sort of. Every sentence is a finely crafted piece of a joke that continues.
Think about Douglas Adams?
Oh my god, yeah! Like, I think every line just like rolls. It just keeps snowballing into a bigger joke a paragraph or so later.
That's a different episode.
Fair enough. Yeah, we could. Let's have an episode just where we disagree on Hitchhiker's Guide. Yeah, fabulous. But yeah, it's a very sloppy sort of like journalistic humor that I think is almost the sort of humor that was like brought into blogs and like the early alternative news sources that everybody reads now.
Anyone can do this. Look, I did it. All it takes is some perseverance.
Yeah, if you already know a publisher, you can probably get them to publish your bullshit.
Right. So, are you familiar with the band the KLF?
Yes. My brother was a KLF fan. They're one of those bands that I am quite familiar with. much like KMFDM, but like I never owned one of their
In
albums.
that they're just letters,
Yes,
starting with K.
but also, I mean, as I'm talking about it, I can see my brother's old plastic Case Logic racks that
Sure.
held his cassettes, and yeah.
So, are you familiar with Justified and Ancient by the KLF?
Yes.
And they had Tammy Wynette sing it?
No.
Yes. They convinced Tammy Wynette. Tammy Wynette, famed country music star, to sing this song about the Justified Ancients of Moo Moo. The whole song is about a group in the Illuminatus trilogy, and they made a music video.
Like a pop music video of it.
Yes,
We
very
should
pop.
link to that in our YouTube.
It's
Who's
done.
it? Great.
No, I know. I sent you a link, but like
Fabulous.
That was like 20 minutes ago.
Awesome.
And
Thrilled.
at 1 minute and 12 seconds into that video,
Uh-huh.
there's a huge wooden structure of a man with arms raised being set on fire, and the video's from 1991,
Oh, that's
before
amazing.
they moved to the desert.
Super cool. KLF.
Also, so KLF won. They had 4 singles on the top charts. They got the British Music Award. They played at the award ceremony with a grindcore band.
Mm-hmm.
Shot a fake machine gun at the audience, and then stopped making music. And their announcement was the KLF has left the music business. They took the £1 million that they made from all those hit singles, and burned it, and recorded themselves burning it. And then signed a contract with someone that they wouldn't talk about it for 23 years. Dude, you should check out this
So
fucking
in
KLF fucking culture
In like
jamming
4.5
shit.
years, they'll talk about it?
No, I think it's actually almost now. They signed it in, I think, 96.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's... Well, I mean, if they haven't talked about it yet, let's try to interview KLF.
Yeah, dude. So I will link to someone that does much more justice to that story with videos and things. And actually, he does reference Doctor Who.
Doctor Who in the medicine? Doctor
no,
Who.
KLF had a different band that made a Doctor Who video.
Gotcha.
I don't know.
Did not like the Doctor Who season that was written by Douglas Adams, but I have not managed to like Doctor Who at all.
There we go. I was gonna say I can't get into it.
I try.
I think it's boring and trite.
It is. Yeah, it is everything that like Hitchhiker's Guide is without the humor of Hitchhiker's Guide. It's just shitty wrote sci-fi from the early 60s.
Yeah, it's fine. Some people like it.
Yeah, they do. I don't get them. But they're not wrong. But I don't get them.
So speaking of sci-fi,
All right.
there's a ton of books that you have that I have not read whatsoever.
There are. And we're going to go to sci-fi before we go back to an experimental novel.
If you want, I mean.
No. This is good. So what I really wanted to do was I wanted to tell people about the Broken Earth trilogy.
Yes.
But I believe that that is much more in the popular consciousness than the series I'm going to talk about. If you guys don't know who N.K. Jemisin is and have not heard of the Broken Earth trilogy, run, do not walk, and read those 3 books as quickly as you can. It is some of like just the most pleasurable, interesting reading that I've done in the past couple years.
Are those books available as a podcast? I'm sorry, it's just how I ingest
Don't know what
media
that
now.
means. I can read it to you.
Okay.
If you give us
Your
$20 a
dulcet
month,
tones.
I will.
Wow.
I will
yeah,
just
let's do
read
that.
books
That's
I
a good
like to
Patreon
people.
fucking goal right there.
All right. So
Tammy
there's.
violates copyright law for $20.
Yeah. But like they're not looking out for podcasts, so I think we're fine.
Not yet.
So the series that I read a year or so after I read Broken Earth that like got me really loving and really back into science fiction is by a woman named Anne Leckie, and I call her trilogy of books the Ancillary Trilogy. It's actually called the Imperial Raj Trilogy, but it's all three of the books start with the word ancillary. And they're Ancillary Justice, Ancillary Sword, and Ancillary Mercy. And I just found out in one of the free little like community library boxes in Oakland that she wrote a fourth book in that world that is not connected to the trilogy called Provenance, which I'm going to read because she's fabulous. So, in this world, Ancillary Justice, Sword, and Mercy are references to different size military starships. The gigantic, like dreadnought size ships are called Justices. Regular ships are Swords, and like tiny little ships are called Mercies. And the thing about this world is it is so far in the technologically developed future that like you don't really need nor could you have humans running these ships. Like they are humongous floating cities. And to keep a humongous floating city safe and contained with atmosphere and a proper environment to sustain life, they develop these AIs to control the ships. And these AIs are thousands of years old. And instead of staffing the ships with crew, the ships are staffed with ancillaries, and there are a couple of, human lieutenants to manage like the ship's AI and be the face of this colonizing force.
And ancillary means subordinate or subsidiary.
Yes.
Auxiliary, supplementary. I had to look it up because I've used the word a bunch, and I just realized that I don't actually know what the fucking word means.
So and spoiler alert, if you don't want to learn anything about this series of books that you will learn within the first 5 or so chapters, I'm sorry, I'm about to
read it.
Ruin the first big reveal. You are led to believe for a minute that the ancillaries are some sort of android. They are not. They are corpses of enemy soldiers that have been programmed with the ship's AI. So the ship's AI runs the ship.
So
the ship's AI is also staffed with thousands of human bodies that the AI is also conscious in.
Okay, but the bodies rot, or do they live forever?
They're dead in terms of the brain death of the host. Like they weren't killed.
I know, but it's still a body that has like a normal kind of lifespan. Do they die?
Yes, they do eventually die. They are strengthened with bionics and things like not that, but they are living people who go through a procedure where their brain is overwritten by the ship's AI. And our protagonist, who was the Justice of Torin, a 3,000-year-old spaceship, ends up getting destroyed, and there is one of her ancillaries left. So she/it goes from being conscious as like a creature with all of the senses of like thousands of different creatures in it and on different planets to just being constrained to one body. And in addition to that, it's a computer intelligence. It doesn't understand things like the differences in genders of the different societies that it's interacting with as it's trying to stay under the radar and bring about some sort of change to the galactic order.
Sounds like how my sense of wonder and beauty was constrained by becoming an adult.
No. I get it. When you were a child, you were like 5,000 children.
Was crazy. Like, oh, look at all this stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm like, nope, you're just going to do this job. You're going to pay rent.
And you are going to try to pay rent if you can't pay rent. And you will sell everything you have to continue paying rent.
How you doing, buddy?
Doing all right. So, 3 books. Each book leaps to... it's not like Dune, where the story takes giant leaps of decades and centuries to complete.
I read Dune and then probably forgot it on purpose.
Fabulous. Well, maybe somebody out there knows what I'm talking about. In this book, like, the themes take these gigantic cognitive leaps. There are a lot of themes of colonization in it. how you manipulate power and what power really is, and different ways of using power and organizing societies. In addition to these AIs, which operate starships and these ancillary people, the galactic ruler is a person named Anandar Manai, who is the only human person who has been doing this to herself for like 5,000 years.
What do you mean doing this to herself?
She is foisting her intelligence into other bodies. The galactic leader is a person who is several tens of thousands of people who are actively ruling like different planets and star systems, because the universe is vast. So it's best to have this one compound intelligence running the universe, and it's this conflict between Justice of Torin and the creature that created it and programmed its intelligence. It's really interesting. I'm going to quote from this really good article and analysis that I read a couple days ago on it, called "The Politics of Justice, Identity, and Empire" in Anne Leckie's Ancillary Trilogy by Liz Burke. And you can find that on Tor.com, and we'll link to it in the show notes if that is a thing we ever end up actually doing.
Yes, we will. We do. We did it. It's there. Look at the show notes. It's
awesome.
There.
So she says, Brecht's arc through the trilogy involves negotiating with power from the perspective of someone who understands what it is to be utterly subject to another's will, and who is then given the power to subject others to their own will, and who acknowledges the difficulties, moral grayness inherent in the responsible use of power. Brecht, who, as I said before, is the Justice of Torin, never tries to excuse her own participation in and complicity with imperial violence, past or present. She doesn't justify it, though she is able to see and articulate how other people justify it. Quote from the text: "Imagine your whole life aimed at conquest, at the spread of Radachi space. You see murder and destruction on an unimaginable scale, but they see the spread of civilization, of justice and prosperity, of benefit for the universe. The death and destruction, these are unavoidable byproducts of this one supreme good."
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of kind of generational abuse.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, you know, if your parents, like, abuse you, you grow up to be an abuser. It's like, once you get the power, then the only thing that you know what to do is, like, abuse someone else.
I think that's a part of it. It's definitely easy to... I mean, I have seen coworkers who I bitched with about our shitty boss become our shitty boss.
Yeah, totally.
And, like, I see our shitty boss and I don't.
Well, if
some of it is just, like, that's how you learn to wield your power and your own agency to get what you want, and you don't have the other tools to get what you want. Some people just want to influence other people with their power.
Right. And I've definitely seen that play out too. And, you know, in my professional life, being able to, like, get power, I've never wanted it. And I see it more as, like, someone a little bit above everyone that can see where problems are and kind of direct people towards it. And that's a very useful tool, but I don't think that tool is any more useful than a shovel.
No, I don't think so. I have run organizations before, and then I didn't want to do that anymore. And then I was just a director for organizations, and I've discovered I don't want to do that anymore either.
Well, some people look at you and think that because you're a manager, you should be wielding that, like, weird, abusive, authoritative power.
And I thought that because I was a manager and I was a very good manager, that when people ask me, like, where my career is heading, I wanted those jobs above manager. I don't. I just don't want to be a coordinator.
Right.
I do want to be a manager of coordinators. That is the sort of, like, brain space work that I am willing to do for an employer.
Well, and that's kind of what I did with the thing that we won't mention, is I wanted to be in between the upper stuff and the actual people doing the job. So I wanted to, on one hand, shield them from bullshit, and also push back and tell the uppers, like, what you're asking is kind of garbage. Here's what I think. Let's meet in the middle. And you know what? they did not even try to meet me in the middle.
Right.
Which is one of the reasons I quit.
Yeah, I mean...
Sorry to... I don't know. It was a... what I'm saying is, like... adorable.
What are you saying?
I'm saying the snippet that you read was rung true for me. That's
yeah, and I mean it continues to vacillate between like the very contemporary space opera which is happening and the internal monologue of this AI trying to figure out like people motivations and how to be its own creature that is in control of its own life now that it is not being absolutely ruled by the captain of itself. Mm. And then it is given a ship to captain. And it is captaining another AI. And what is that like? Like, how do you foist your will on another creature when you remember being that sort of a creature who would have died for your captain, but not because you wanted to, just because you were programmed to absolutely obey and love your captain. Mm-hmm. And the very subtle ways that that an AI is able to justify being shitty to the people on the ship who treat it poorly. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't act out against a person that runs counter to your programming. But you can make sure that the soup they get for dinner is never warm.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. That's some human, just spiteful...
Yeah, you can't program pettiness out of an AI.
If it's a tool of power, someone that is so invested in the idea that power exists over someone else, they're going to use it.
Yeah.
I don't believe that power exists in and of the person wielding it. I think the power exists in the person that is subservient. That you give that power to an authority. We can talk about that, but like, I think, yeah, never mind. It's gonna be a long digression if I start down that.
Fair enough. So, Ancillary Trilogy, you can find it by searching that online. If you have ever read Ursula Le Guin, who wrote the Earthsea trilogy and like many groundbreaking science fiction books, the best of hers, in my opinion, is called The Left Hand of Darkness, which is, it's like a science fiction Jack London tale. It is one of my favorite pieces of science fiction. She and Anne Leckie are like at the same caliber of looking at society through an exceptional, insightful, and non-Robert Heinlein lens.
Yeah, copy that. Could we... All right, how do you want to do this? You want you one, then me one?
We can either do that, or we can both talk about House of Leaves.
I'm down to both talk about House of Leaves.
All right.
And it's been a while since I read it, and I have not revisited it for this, even though I knew we were going to go into it.
I'm not going to go that deeply into it.
The thing in your document, like the end of your quote was,
right.
Now the nightmares begin.
Yes.
Actually,
well, you know what?
When I was reading this, I did have a fucking nightmare about fucking reading this book, and I don't have nightmares about shit. That and the movie The Audition. But like...
Oh, I still haven't seen that.
Oh, dude, it's fucked up.
I just saw Us. Mm-hmm. That is a goddamn masterpiece. Mm-hmm. I thought Get Out was spectacular, but like, there is meaning in every shot in Us. There is so much going on in that movie.
Well, and I think part of what really struck me about Audition is that it is from Japanese or Korean culture. Mm-hmm. And there's something really kind of other about it that I couldn't quite get my hands on. And
did you ever see the actual The Grudge?
The Grudge? No.
So there was a remake.
I never saw the non-actual.
There was an American movie called The Grudge in the late 90s, right after The Ring came out. Mm-hmm. I think The Ring is better than Ringu, the original Japanese film.
I haven't seen that either.
The
I don't really watch
Grudge,
horror
the
stuff.
Japanese version, I think, is called Ju-on or Juo. And it's much creepier than the Sarah Michelle Gellar vehicle called The Grudge.
I had no idea.
And
Sarah
it's-
Michelle Gellar, I'm glad she's getting work.
It's very
Jesus.
it's very uncomfortable, and I couldn't figure out why.
I think
and-
it's just like different timing and just different, like a different notion of what.
There's people
Movies are.
entering houses in that movie and like just freaking out, and I couldn't figure out what the reason was. And it was Japanese people entering kind of cluttered houses. And that is just a sign of like such mental disturbance in their culture. Like every single scene is immediately imbued with like, what the fuck is wrong? What
Dude,
is
you know
what is
what?
going on? I don't get.
I actually have that notion too when I walk into someone's house and it is cluttered. I'm like, okay, all right, well, there's a certain way I'm gonna have to fucking deal with this person. And having a roommate that is incredibly cluttered drives me batshit fucking crazy.
Like
It's an exercise in patience every day. I fucking walk into.
I am not a neat person. But
Neither am
all
but
I
keep
need,
my shit to myself.
all I need is a person who is like leaving clutter in my living room to be a goddamn neat person. Because like at least the clutter has to be in piles, and as long as I'm putting it in piles, they can be in piles over there in your room,
Yeah.
where
No,
I'm making
totally.
your new goddamn pile.
Like, oh, you have food. I get it. There's a bowl. Why did you leave it in the living room?
Yeah, why is
When
the
you
bowl
went-
here?
You went to your room after you ate. If you're not gonna do the dish, take it to your fucking room.
You walked past
Take it to your
the
room.
open and empty dishwasher
Yes.
to put your dish in the sink.
Yeah, and man, I
don't
know if
care.
I'm ever gonna win this fight.
I don't care if I have to take your still kind of half dirty dish out of the dishwasher because it was too cloddy to be fully washed in the dishwasher and then rinse it in the sink before I put it away. Then there is shit piling up in the sink. What if I have to take a shit in the sink?
Because you're taking too long taking your goddamn shower, and I gotta go to work. Yeah, no, I've been there, brother.
All right. So I think the best way to introduce House of Leaves is with the intro of the novel.
Sure.
And then
I
we
don't
can
know how to introduce
we
it,
can
honestly.
talk about what it portends.
Sure.
Much like Xeno, I had I don't have nightmares. Like as close as I get to waking up in like panic and fear is like dreams of falling.
Mine is about work, but those aren't real nightmares. That's just shit I'm
Stress.
thinking about.
Yeah.
It's not scary. It's just annoying.
When I started reading like grown-up books, I was in 3rd or 4th grade. My brother was 3 years older than me. He was reading Of Mice and Men, and we were on a road trip, and I had finished my bullshit like Hardy Boys book.
Were you on a road trip from Oklahoma to California?
We were on.
Sorry.
No, we were actually stuck in the Hershey Park parking lot for like 7 hours because my grandfather did antique car shows with his antique cars, and they would open up Hershey Park for one day in like the late fall to have this car show, and all of the kids who like were tag-alongs could go in Hershey Park stuff, except it was raining, so the park was closed. So my grandpa was having a car show that we weren't allowed to be in, and we just sat in the car. And that was the day that I read Of Mice and Men, like from cover to cover twice in like 3rd or 4th grade. And I immediately jumped from that to Stephen King's Cujo to start reading Stephen King actively from 4th grade on. So like books do not scare me. They don't give me nightmares.
Yeah, I did The Stand. I did Silver Bullet? Is that the fucking name of that? The werewolf one?
I think the movie was called Silver Bullet,
Yeah,
but the
I read
story
that,
was called
and
something else.
The Stand was like, it was compelling, but it didn't scare me.
Right. The Shining, I do believe, is truly scary. I believe that Salem's Lot is kind of a cosmically terrifying, very visceral, sort of scary novel, but like House of Leaves is crazy.
Another order of terror.
Like it is written in the way that in a way that can communicate what cosmic horror
and it did.
is.
It communicated that to me, and I have pretty high barriers for having other things affect me
Right.
emotionally. I'm like, nope, the world can't hurt me. Fuck it. But no, I read that book and I fucking had nightmares while I was reading it, and I was compelled to finish it because I was like, if this is getting into my dreams, this must be important. If this hurts me, it's gotta be fucking awesome.
I think it is a very important novel. I would just like to say that I stopped reading Philip Roth and John Irving because both of them can write very, very funny novels, and both of them can write novels that sound very funny, but while you're reading them, like, it will rip your guts out with just misery and depression and sadness. And like, I usually don't read those sorts of books that like affect me that way. Mm-hmm. And House of Leaves did.
I would love to read books that affect me that way because I'm not used to being affected that much. It's
I can't be feeling like upset in my regular life because I'm upset because of what a character is going through in a book.
Retainer?
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember you take
with teeth on it.
Yeah. You remember you take the retainer off and then you poke the
gum.
Yeah, and it feels all tingly and weird.
Oh, we're gonna talk so much about that when we have my tooth episode.
That's how I feel about shit that can affect me emotionally. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, that's a weird sensitive area that's been numb forever.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, let's do that. Let's fuck with that, even though it's like nightmarish and horrible.
Okay, so
we're gonna do this.
House of Leaves starts. This much I'm certain of. It doesn't happen immediately. You'll finish the book, and that will be that, until a moment will come, maybe in a month, maybe a year, maybe even several years. You'll be sick or feeling troubled or deeply in love or quietly uncertain or even content for the first time in your life. It won't matter. Out of the blue, beyond any cause you can trace, you'll suddenly realize things are not how you perceived them to be at all. For some reason, you will no longer be the person you believed you once were. You'll detect slow and subtle shifts going on all around you, more importantly, shifts in you. Worse, you'll realize it's always been shifting, like a shimmer of sorts, a vast shimmer, only dark like a room. But you won't understand why or how. You'll have forgotten what granted you this awareness in the first place. You might try then, as I did, to find a sky so full of stars it will blind you again. Only no sky can blind you now. Even with all that iridescent magic up there, your eye will no longer linger on the light. It will no longer trace constellations. You'll care only about the darkness, and you'll watch it for hours, for days, maybe even for years, trying in vain to believe you're some kind of indispensable, universe-appointed sentinel, as if just by looking you could actually keep it all at bay. It will get so bad, you'll be afraid to look away. You'll be afraid to sleep. Then no matter where you are, in a crowded restaurant or on some desolate street or even in the comforts of your own home, you'll watch yourself dismantle every assurance you ever lived by. You'll stand aside as a great complexity intrudes, tearing apart, piece by piece, all of your carefully conceived denials, whether deliberate or unconscious. And then, for better or worse, you'll turn, unable to resist, though try to resist you still will, fighting with everything you've got not to face the thing you most dread, what is now, what will be, what has always come before, the creature you truly are, the creature we all are, buried in the nameless black of a name. And then the nightmares will begin.
And then I had nightmares.
It is very rare that the introduction to a book so purely encapsulates all of the themes that you are going to experience in the book. Mm-hmm.
It sounds pretentious and bullshit. It sounds like a writer just wagging his dick at you from, like, a balcony. Like Rasputin did with the Russian populace when he was like, I fucked the queen with this. Mm-hmm. No. He's absolutely right about all that. And it's not self-aggrandizing, it's kind of humble. It's kind of like, no, this is just going to happen, it's fine.
And, I mean, the character who is telling us that in the meta-narrative is a pretentious ass.
Yes.
This is a story told to you by a person
yes, there's very
who is
again
who has seen a video, who is writing like a journalistic piece on the situation that happened, and there's layers and layers of shit going on, but ostensibly there is a house that has been surveyed by engineers, which is a quarter of an inch larger on the inside of the house than it is on the outside of the house.
That's how it starts? I don't remember, but yeah.
And that is a thing that needs to be investigated.
Like, how do you... What?
Yeah,
and
that is not a thing that can exist.
Once you pick at the scab of a curiosity of, like, this isn't right. Sometimes that scab just ends up being above, like, an artery and just sprays blood all over you. Like, once you start diving into something and trying to figure something out, you get, like, roped into this crazy thing.
Do you know the difference between a labyrinth and a maze?
Yes. A labyrinth only has one path.
Which does what?
It goes to the center.
Yes. This book is based on that theory. There is a labyrinth in this book. There is a minotaur in the center of that labyrinth.
But there's a... Okay. Remind me. We never see the minotaur.
You don't see the minotaur. You hear the minotaur.
Right.
You see the effects of the minotaur.
Yeah, you can tell that the minotaur is there, but you never see it.
It's very that movie that was filmed all shaky cam in the Baltimore woods with the witch, the Blair Witch Project.
Oh man, I saw that in theaters. Loved it. The snot was great. Great. Fucking loved it. Very authentic. Well, and their promo around it being like, oh, this is real. Oh, some people actually. Whoa. I don't know. It's before the internet really took off, so like. I don't know. People kind of
there was a website
that
it seemed like an actual conspiracy. Unfortunately, I knew those woods that they were lost in. Just like outside of Baltimore. Yeah. Oh no, the problem is like at their widest, I think it's like 1.5 miles thick. But no matter where you are, you can hear all of the highways around that part, that wooded area.
That's right.
Back to House of Leaves.
But, yes.
This book is not like only a meta-narrative couched in a narrative, couched in a whatever is the opposite of a meta-narrative.
I think
it's also published in an incredibly interesting way. The Library of Congress page on the inside tells of the different editions of the book.
Really? I didn't know that.
Of which only one of them was ever true from the beginning, but he has since released one of the other versions. Like, so in the book, it says like some passages will be blue, some passages will be red, some passages will be black. Yeah. Right. But it talks of this other version.
Right.
With more colors and italics and stuff, and there's another version with less. There was only one version.
Yeah.
When
I assumed that was him just fucking with people.
It was. Yeah. But like there is since one of my friends who was just like, no. Here's my version with the blue and the red text. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking? What? That's amazing. There are cutouts in the book that aren't literal like holes in the pages, but there are circles in the pages where there are not the regular text of the narrative, and they have inserted text that is a couple sentences, which is like backwards in the shape of a circle in the text, which you have to read like backwards from the point that you find it.
Or something.
It is I mean backward, like in the pages of the book. Like you have to read to the point where that where bubble leaves,
stops, and then that's
you read that back through the book. I don't like when people couch narratives, and I don't like when people give me homework in a book. Danielowski is an exception, and surprisingly, J.J. Abrams is an exception. J.J. Abrams published a book about a decade ago now called S. And it is a hardcover book inside of like a cardboard box that says S on it. But the book itself that you get is not called S. It has a different title. And then you open it up and you start reading it, and there is a character who is taking notes in like blue pencil in the margins.
Yeah.
And then there is a person in red ink who is responding to the person in blue pencil.
I remember that.
And then you turn to a page and there's like a cipher.
Mm-hmm.
I
remember like him talking to the other person in the book.
Yeah. It is the ending in the book is not anything that it's not
it's
about
not
that.
about the destination, it's about the journey.
And the journey is fucking fabulous.
Terrifying. Actually, it's horror. Wait. I think
in both books. I was still talking about S. In House of Leaves, it's fabulous. In S, it's a little bit more mundane than that. But the same concept is of like there is a mystery happening in this book, and if you also want to be a person solving this mystery, you can do these extra things that we've given you. If you don't, you can still read the book and get like 70 to 90% of the meaning from just the context clues in the book. All right. So the Magus, which I call the Magus,
never heard of it,
which is by John Fowles.
Introduce me to this.
Have you ever heard of a novel called The French Lieutenant's Woman?
Nope.
So that's like the real postmodernist masterpiece that John Fowles wrote. It is like a Victorian era like British romance novel, which is just a straight like kind of simpering British romance novel for the majority of it, with some incredibly insightful and pointedly so subversion of just the toxic tropes of the romance that we grow up with. And then at a certain point in it, which you do not expect, John Fowles actually inserts himself into the narrative as a character, just to shit on the protagonist you've been reading about for a couple hundred pages. The Magus protagonist is a dude named Nicholas Erf. I believe that his surname is Erf because it sounds like a glottal stop and like someone choking, and that is the sort of levels that John Fowles puts into his work. It's like it's not deep, but like just below the surface, there probably is the meaning that you're looking for. The vague antagonist, maybe mentor in the novel, his name is Conchis. He's a Greek man. It's spelled Conchis, but like obviously supposed to be pronounced conscious, and is going to be a consciousness raising character in some way. Nicholas is our protagonist is a young Englishman. He is upper middle crust to quite upper middle crust. He's had privilege. He's definitely gone to a sort of like private or boarding school. He takes a teaching job on a Greek island, and
I feel like if crust is part of your level of status,
it shouldn't be upper.
Dirty.
Yeah, you'd think so. But I think the problem is that in England, their upper crust is royalty.
Sure.
And if you're not royalty, you're the crust. Like they're the cream.
Right.
But like he gets this job on an English island, and he's not thrilled about it. And he's kind of a young douche who thinks that he is much more important and destined for much greater things than the things he's doing. But not because he's skilled or like insightful or good at anything.
Just because he feels like it.
Yeah, he's kind of like I'm gonna say like the first 30 or 40 pages are kind of tough to get through. But what you will learn in the Magus is that everything that you know that is happening in the narrative is consistently upended every 35 to 55 pages. You get to a point where you're just like, what the fuck novel am I reading? Like, is this fantasy? Is this like some sort of insightful look at like English colonialism? in the Mediterranean. Like, you don't know, is this now like a sex novel? And it's the first like piece of work that I really identify as being a event that we shall not name, sort of like transformative cacophonist work. Like, even though I did not identify with who the protagonist is, I understand what the feelings
like many times be like someone you don't identify with. Sometimes the protagonist is just, they just lead you through the story.
Sometimes. I have the feeling that this was written specifically toward like that sort of upper crust white English gentleman who would get pulled into this thinking like, oh, this is me. This is how I would feel in this situation going to this backwoods Greek island that I think is going to be kind of like a resort, but I end up teaching like the children of sheep herders. And now there's this mystery that I'm pursuing like on the hills of this island.
Okay. Side note. So, the white whale with Melville.
Right.
The protagonist isn't a good guy, right?
No.
Right. So I think that I appreciate it when like the person that's telling you the thing is obviously like they have bad moral character.
Yes, but like many of the books that I love, you cannot trust this character's perspective on what's going on.
Sure. Yeah.
You're told so early that I am a prick.
Yeah.
And that, like, I think things are coming to me. Yeah, but he's not.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't a Chuck Palahniuk novel.
We are not talking about that.
I agree.
It's fine.
Unless we're talking about invisible monsters, and that's the only thing of his I'm talking about.
Okay, we can talk about it later.
Okay, so, not a thing that I pulled from anywhere. So if somebody else said this, bully for them. The Magus is as close to Lost crossed with Eyes Wide Shut of anything that I've ever seen.
Except it's a book, not a visual
It's a book, not a visual medium. But, like, there is that sort of cliffhanger, what the fuck is going on? You were given a tidbit of information at intervals, which completely transforms your perspective of the piece that you're interacting with, like in Lost.
That's one of the things I love about Thomas Pynchon, because he doesn't really tie things together at the end. He just like lets you, like, all these loose strings. You're left in a room with a bunch of yarn, and you're just like, I'm gonna tie this one to this one.
We probably have to have our own day talking about Thomas Pynchon.
Sure.
But Thomas Pynchon doesn't write books. He writes a diorama for you.
We can do another books one.
I think we do like 2 books ones a year, easily. Yeah. But yeah, Thomas Pynchon doesn't so much like write you a narrative as he just keeps giving you details on this ever-evolving scene and then leaves it where it is.
And lets you fucking deal with it, brutally or otherwise.
And when I said I haven't read anything since Vineland earlier, I neglected to mention that I've read Inherent Vice.
Okay.
But that's the only thing I've read since Vineland.
So, can I just really quick?
Yeah.
The beginning character of Inherent Vice is the last character in Against the Day. And it's not explicit, but it's obvious.
Do you have it? It's huge, isn't it?
It's very big. It's about 1,000 pages.
Okay, I'll put it on my Kindle. We'll start talking about Kindles in a minute when we talk about Infinite Jest.
Yeah.
Let me finish on the Magus for a second.
Sorry, I didn't mean to disrupt.
It's fine. We damn well should talk about Pynchon, but like that'll be something else about Thomas Pynchon.
Yeah, we could just maybe do a Pynchon cast.
Like, yeah. Oh my God,
dude.
If we want that third person to keep us on track, like Rex will never stop talking about Thomas Pynchon.
Oh, I want that. Let's do that.
All right. We'll call it pinching or something. It'll be terrible. Rex loves puns. Okay. So something that that I kind of appreciated that a lot of people find off-putting about the Magus is that like practically damn near everything, locations, characters, situations, all of them are references to either mythology or other literature. It happens in Greece, so you can expect all of the Grecian mythology to filter in a way. It's not
called Grecian?
Greek mythology, but yeah,
Okay.
like as opposed to Roman mythology.
Sure. No, I'll go with it.
So like that stuff comes in and you get it. There are a lot of references to classical literature, which I don't think you need to know to further the plot. Just everything that feels like there's a depth to it that you're not getting, there absolutely is.
That sounds opposite. You're like, there are things you don't need to know about, but then there's references that you absolutely do need to know about.
Well, it's not like there isn't the context there to figure out who like this character is or what this situation is
so you
like.
don't need to know it to understand the story.
You
But
can
it
understand
helps,
English without knowing the Latin root of English.
but it helps to know the deep dives. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, ish.
Okay.
The information that you're given by these like first, second order things that he's telling you in the meta narrative, they're only going to help you inform what's happening for the next 30 or 40 pages. Then the narrative is going to take another twist where you're going to kind of want to throw the book against the wall because you still can't nail down like what is happening or why, or if there's like you can't even ever tell if there's a motivation for the plot happening because you don't know if anything's dangerous or fraught. You're like 30 to 60% convinced through the entire narrative that like this is just a rich guy who is old fucking with a rich guy who is young and hasn't earned his wealth. And you get an inkling of that in like the last page or page and a half. Kind of in the same way that like when you get to the end of this book, just like the first time I finished The Crying of Lot 49, I sighed and I started reading the book again from the beginning.
Yes, absolutely.
The Crying of Lot 49, if anyone hasn't ever read it, it's like 130 pages long
It's
because
the
you're expected to
easiest
read it at
Thomas
least
Pynchon.
twice.
It's the easiest Thomas Pynchon. So
It
many
is the
people-
shortest Thomas Pynchon.
we're back.
What John Fowles says about our protagonist Nicholas early in the book is from his perspective, and it's one of the first inklings when you're really getting your footing in the novel of the sort of person who is going to be directing the narrative that you're reading. He says, I acquired expensive habits and affected manners. I got a third-class degree and a first-class illusion that I was a poet. But nothing could have been less poetic than my seeing through all boredom with life in general, and with making a living in particular. I was too green to know that all cynicism masks a failure to cope, and impotence, in short, and that to despise all effort is the greatest effort of all. But I did absorb a small dose of one permanently useful thing, Oxford's greatest gift to civilized life, Socratic honesty. It showed me very intermittently that it is not enough to revolt against one's past. One day I was outrageously bitter among some friends about the army. Back in my own rooms later, it suddenly struck me that just because I said with impunity things that would have apoplexed my dead father, I was still no less under his influence. The truth was that I was not a cynic by nature, only by revolt. I had got away from what I hated, but I hadn't found where I loved, and so I pretended that there was nowhere to love. Handsomely equipped to fail, I went out into the world.
Fuck you. It's fucking beautiful. Can you just restart like the first couple sentences?
I acquired expensive habits and affected manners. I got a third-class degree and a first-class illusion that I was a poet. But nothing could have been less poetic than my seeing through all boredom with life in general and with making a living in particular. I was too green to know that all cynicism masks a failure to cope.
There we go.
And impotence, in short, and that to despise all effort is the greatest effort of all.
No, the cynicism and hope. Oh man,
Like, that's it.
Oh, fuck
That's the
off,
thing that
fuck off.
Dude, it's like 12 to 15 pages in, if even that, and I was just like, oh, this fucking prick. What? Like, what with all your privilege happens next that you're also nonplussed at? And then it, like, seriously goes into almost Lost level fantasy. But you're never sure if, like, that is a thing that is actually happening, or if this person is so bored they're just walking the hills making this shit up. And then there's this other character, Conscious, who is, and in the way that they tried to make a movie of Catch-22,
Garbage.
they tried to make a movie of this, which when I was in college, like, I went on half.com or eBay and I bought a VHS of this that was, like, far more expensive than I had money to buy, because you couldn't just steal media back then. When you were just like, is this actually worth paying a publisher for? It's not. It's bad. It very much like Zack Snyder's Watchmen, it hits the story beats without giving any of the meaning to, like, why this happens in the original story to make it a transformative text.
Hello, sorry to cut in here. This is Zeno doing some editing on our podcast, and I just decided to cut out a rather lively, spirited debate about the merits of the Watchmen show and the Zack Snyder movie Watchmen, which don't really relate to books. So we're going to cut that out and maybe release it as its own little standalone, as a shorter kind of interstitial episode a little bit later. But now back to books.
Talking about the Magus.
Okay.
We are good friends. We agree on a lot of things. Let's talk about
and
the
everything
Magus.
before that's probably been cut out from the episode.
I
Okay,
don't know, man.
So there's that paragraph about Nicholas and who he is and how disaffected he is and how he gets an idea that his disaffection is a hereditary condition that is more effort than just being present, which isn't even a concept I had before I read this book. That me being a part of the world around me and immediately finding what's at fault and shitting on it to be witty was more effort than being a part of and finding out what was worthwhile in the situation that I'm in. But then John Fowles, as he does, he starts writing through Conscious. And Conscious is the avatar of John Fowles as far as I'm concerned, in the same way that Lazarus Long is the avatar of Heinlein in his novels, and, like, is basically just espousing the libertarian views of Heinlein as little aphorisms and as moments of insight in his novels. And whoever it was that Kurt Vonnegut Jr. had as his avatar in his novels.
Kurt Vonnegut.
No, he has a character who's like a journalist or something who I forget.
Like
but that's
Redder,
that is Kurt Vonnegut telling you what he thinks of his characters and things. I don't think that John Fowles is being honest with you all the time when he was telling you his opinions through Conscious. I think sometimes he is telling you exactly what he thinks about the characters, and sometimes he's giving you a bunch of bullshit in the hopes that you read through his bullshit that he is telling you about the characters. And one of the things that he says as Conscious in the book is, men love war because it allows them to look serious, because they imagine it is the one thing that stops women laughing at them. In it, they can reduce women to the status of objects. That is the greatest distinction between the sexes. Men see objects, women see relationships between objects. Whether the objects love each other, need each other, match each other, it is an extra dimension of feeling we men are without, and one that makes war abhorrent to all real women, and absurd. I will tell you what war is. War is a psychosis caused by an inability to see relationships. Our relationship with our fellow men. Our relationship with our economic and historic situation. And above all, our relationship to nothingness, to death. And I don't entirely agree with that. Like, I don't think there are necessarily those gender binaries. But I do think that society wants there to be those gender binaries. And that's what he's talking about.
Those.
And I mean, this is coming from a culture that, like, had the fucking Falklands War.
Mm-hmm.
Like, colonized most of the world, let most of the world slip away, and then was just like, you know what, but fuck you 3 places. Like, Bermuda's still gonna be British.
Yeah.
Because our rich people live there. That's why. It's really an indictment of English colonialism throughout. Tied to Greek mythology. And, like, seriously, you will have no idea what's happening until the very end. And then, in the last several paragraphs, you get a piece of context that makes you very much want to read the entire novel again, just knowing that the entire impetus of this rests on a thing that is lied to you about in the beginning. And that is The Magus by John Fowles.
So, this book is weird. It's called MFU. It's by HC, which evidently
Do not trust.
We're not supposed to trust anyone with those initials.
Might not be
And,
initials. There's no periods between them. It's just HC.
Can I tell you how I found this book?
Yes,
Weird.
please.
So in about 1999, I was in Seattle and Google had just started. And I had been using search engines, but I'd also been like a weird hacker, like
Guy.
piece of shit, just fucking internet guy. And when someone says, hey, we have a new search engine, you should check it out, I was like, nah, it's probably garbage. So, on one of the first day it got launched, I put fucked up shit into Google, and one of the first things that came up was this book.
Which you had or had not already read.
I had never heard of it.
Wow.
And I went through it. Here's the cool thing. The author, HC, actually has the entire book online. If you want to read it, you can sit there and just click through it. You can read it. It's fucking weird.
Looks like it's a couple hundred pages.
Maybe 150.
Great.
Nah, like 206.
Cool.
But they're like, it's big type. And that's how I discovered that Google was kind of the shit. Like, they actually fucking found shit on the internet that I was not gonna find.
Right.
So I read it. I was like, this is fucking amazing. I love it. It inspired me to write some weird shit. And I started doing these buys from him of like 10 copies at a time. Because I would just like give them to friends. So I'd like get 10 and just be like, all right, this friend deserves it. I'll hand it out. Whoop. I'm out. I guess I'll get another 10. I did about 30 of these. And then the dude that wrote it, HC, wrote me and said, hey,
You're buying an awful lot of my books, buddy.
he said, you're doing a better job than my publicist. And I was like, I have a lot of weirdos, and I want to share them. You know, I want to share this with them. And he was like, well, I mean, you're not claiming to them that you wrote this.
It's like, dude, I'm giving you... Yeah, no, I'm buying your book, ripping the cover off, and giving it to him.
Yeah. And I was like, no, not at all.
Yeah, my friends are real aware that I don't write novels.
Not even close. But it did inspire me to write some things. And I was like, and in my back and forth with him, I was like, look, this is what I write. Here's the thing. And I like showed him my like live journal. I was like, no, this is what I do. And he sent me a couple more and then stopped. Like, even on Amazon, I would like buy a book on Amazon, and if he saw my name, he would cancel the order because he thought that I was claiming that I wrote this.
So that's why you can't buy his books anymore.
This is why I cannot buy his books anymore. However, I still want to support him, and I want all of the listeners to go to C3F.com. Go there. You can buy it from Amazon.
This is how you get Xeno to support you, is you create something Xeno's
Just
interested in,
antagonism.
and then you're just like, yeah, no, you can't have that. That's not good enough for you. And Xeno will just promote you to the ends of the earth.
No, I've been promoting this guy for fucking ever, and the fact that he is like, no, you're stealing from me, you're an asshole, does not dissuade me. So, at the weird thing that we won't talk about, I would make my crew open this book up to a random page and just start reading. And I think that your voice is better than mine, so
Right.
if you could please
I'll do that.
just flip through to a random page
I
and
got
just
one.
start reading.
Somebody fucking somebody else's ex-wife. Oh, somebody is fucking somebody else's ex-wife. The ex-wife's kid walks in and sees it and gets so pissed he goes out and smashes a stolen car into a crowd of people, killing 7, injuring 11. The brother of one of the people killed goes crazy with revenge and tracks the kid down and drives by his house and fires repeatedly into the window. But instead of the kid, the ex-wife is hit and in critical condition and has to be rocketed immediately to the only planet in the galaxy where the gravity and atmosphere allow the very delicate operation she needs to survive. But there's only one pod available for the trip, and that one hasn't been inspected for years. And the only person who knows how to launch it properly is a drunken loser, sleeping in the gutter, high on DMT, and in danger of dying at any random moment from choking to death on her own vomit.
Perfect.
All right, I want to read that.
Yeah, so literally, you can open up to any page and it will be that intense and that crazy. I love this book on so many levels because there's just, like, there's no start or end. It's just consistently fuck up. It's consistently like, I destroyed a universe and now I have to build a new one. Fuck.
So is it science fiction? Is there a through line through it? Is
There's
it psychedelic?
The through line is the attitude. I mean, he's a paranoid weird motherfucker.
Don't know Xeno, love your book.
Yeah.
Okay, this is page 164. I'm going to read verse 12. Some orderlies took me out and stuffed me into the Alzheimer's, which they'd gotten back into working order, except for the amenities that depended on explosive bolts. Because of my condition, they put the car on automatic driver for me so I could just sit back and watch the roadside carnage passing by. Then they connected the starter leads, tied down the gas pedal, shut the door, and released the car. 13. There were endless streams of surly space case people on the roads, of course, many still clutching a shoelace or eyelash of structural protein from the object whose desire had brought them out here in the first place. At the rest stops that ticked past, victims
Hi,
of placebo
this is Zeno.
ODs huddled together in
We
tight
just cut
comfort
out
groups,
a rather
seeking
long
tough,
and spirited
explicit
debate
warmth
about
and trying
virtues
hard to
of
break the mood
Watchmen,
of fear,
the Zack
and to
Snyder
escape the random
movie
swings
and
of
the TV
peer-to-peer
show,
oppression
which,
that
we'll probably just
outstrip even
release
the power of
as an
governments and
interstitial
scumbags.
little episode because
I flipped
man,
on the radio,
this
but
episode
every
is already
station
long,
seemed to be
as it is with
broadcasting
all
on the
cuts
same
we've already
public
made,
service announcement.
And, I think
The only
you've
thing that's relevant
heard
now,
our dumb
it
voices,
began,
for a long
is
time.
being out there on the air to either ask or answer the big question. And neither the actual question asked nor the actual answer given, right or wrong, weak or strong, matters one fucking bit. I think that if I reach out to HC,
Yeah.
I can probably get HC to appear on a podcast.
Dude, go for it. He will not talk to me.
That's
at
fine.
all. I assume it's a he because just like that shit is not written by a woman.
Doesn't
sorry to be
feel
gendered,
woman-y.
but, like, honestly, that is a dude.
Yeah, no, that feels very tropically written by a man who likes science fiction. Could be wrong. But I'll see what I can do.
I would actually like to talk to him, like on a podcast, and be like, "Hey, like, I just really liked your book."
I really like the something else about format of these. Like, yeah, if we find something else about HC, then holy shit, will I dive down for an hour or so with HC. And listeners, if you know anyone who wants to just tell us a bunch of bullshit for like an hour, I want to delve into what people are expert in, if possible.
This is the end of
Something else about books?
Yeah.
Part 1.
We're good.
The introductioning.
I'm Zeno. It's an X.
It's an XENO. You can find him on email and on the
can
wider
try.
internet as a
You
guy
will
named
fail.
Zeno, who people who are involved with Burning Man and counterculture on the West Coast speak with reverence. And I'm D-Day, who is not as impressive as Zeno, except in certain ways, which I'm not going to talk about. It's not about you.
Anyway,
We
goodbye.
drank well over half a bottle of whiskey.
Goodbye.
You are welcome.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can't get away. Rest to know, ways to grow, a reading rainbow. I can't get anything. Take a look in a book, a reading